Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Dodd Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
Take a seat with Alfred Bucci.
I could tell you a little story if you want to hear it.
And prepare to be taken back.
I'm 98 years old.
A World War II veteran.
The only time you get scared is the beginning.
His memories of those days nearly 80 years ago.
You have a few bad ones, but you also have a lot of good ones.
Are crystal clear.
December the 13th, we were offensive, ready to go do some fighting. And for some reason, though, they stopped December the 15th.
He fought through the Battle of the Bulge.
The next day, which was December the 16th, that's when all hell broke loose.
And twice maintained post when left behind overnight in enemy territory.
I gotta list them someplace.
He's a well-decorated soldier with awards including a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart, to name a few.
To tell you the truth, each one is a major combat, each star. So it's 3 major combat. That's what I'm proud of.
If you can't tell.
The guys that I grew up with, only 1 or 2 of them came back.
Al Bucci is filled with pride.
I'm not proud to be American. That's all. That's all I can say.
On this day,
I'm anxious.
He has a new reason to be proud.
I want to see what he's like and how he acts.
So Bucci is 5 months old today.
You see, Bucci is meeting his 4-legged namesake.
He's from Warrior Canine Connection, which does service dogs for veterans with disabilities. They are named after previous veterans.
Come here, Bucci. Hey, Booch, come here. Come here, Booch. Oh.
The 2 Buccis, or Booch the Pooch, as Al likes to call him.
Here you are, look.
Instantly connect.
You're as happy as I am.
Champagne to toast Bucci's career.
In a rare moment.
Well, what can I say?
Fit for a champagne toast.
It's a great privilege, and everything goes smooth from here on in and here on out. And it's really, really, really a great thing. You got organizations doing a wonderful thing for everybody.
Giving back and honoring veterans.
I'm just so proud and blessed.
Thank you for what you do. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you both.
Who so bravely defended our country.
I never dreamed something like this would happen.
So next time you take a seat with Al.
Here, Booch. Here, Boochie.
He'll have a new story to tell.
I can't give it to you. You can't drink this. You're too young.
As long as you'll listen.
It's an honor for me. It's an honor.
In Catonsville.
As it was. Good dog.
Maxine Stryker. Fox 45 News.
Welcome to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. And Jeff Copsetta cannot join us tonight, so it is me and Henry Sledge. And I just want to say Merry Christmas to Privates First Class Alfred Bucci and all the World War II vets that are still with us on this planet and joining the holiday, hopefully with their families. And all of our thoughts and prayers and holiday wishes are with you guys. How are you doing today, Mr. Sledge?
I'm doing just fine, man. It's gotten pretty chilly down here in Alabama. It's probably about 45 today.
Ooh.
Not nearly as, talking to a Florida boy, I guess that says something, but I've been doing a lot of reading on Battle of the Bulge. So, seasonally appropriate, tied right in with your soundbite there. And, constantly, man, I'm just thinking about, I am so glad I'm not, out on the Schnee Eifel in a dadgum foxhole when it's, what were the actual temperatures? Were they weren't sub-zero, were they?
On Battle of the Bulge?
Yeah.
I know it was the coldest in like 32 years. Let's see.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they were bitterly, brutally cold. But they did have a lot of snow at certain points, so.
Bulge. Let's see here. Quick search.
This time of year, man, it's always Battle of the Bulge.
According to APnews.com, one conflict that stood out was the 6-week Battle of the Bulge, which took place in European theater 76 years ago. This was published last year. In December 1944, it was waged as a harsh wintry conditions, about 8 inches of snow on the ground, and the average temperature of 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So on average, 20 degrees, which means occasionally it would dip below that. But sitting out in a foxhole in 20-degree weather with little to no winter clothing, and, you know, if you're lucky, you had an M41 or an M43 with a wool liner, and you had your wool shirt on and maybe a pair of wool trousers underneath your HPT pants. Or if you're super duper lucky, you got a hold of a trench coat. But yeah, those guys are out there in 20-degree weather. Which, yeah, if you're getting out of your car or out of your living room and walking to check the mailbox, 20 degrees ain't bad. But when you're living in it 24 hours a day for 6 weeks,
it would be so debilitating. And I mean, imagine. So my uncle was in the 741st Tank Battalion, you know, so they were linking up with 2nd Infantry Division up near Wallershot at Heartbreak Crossroads on the north shoulder of the Bulge. So, you know, having read everything I can on tankers, even read one memoir of a guy who was a German tanker, you know, he would talk about waking up in his Tiger tank in the morning, and it just, you know, of course, it's nothing but a metal inside the turret there, down in the hull, and the entire everything would just be condensated, and, you know, icicles dripping off the wall. And I mean, you know, that's just like a giant ice box.
And just imagine being like a mortarman. Not, you know, some of them had gloves, they had the fingers cut off for the trigger and all that, but some of those guys didn't have gloves. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you know all about the equipment required to operate a mortar, but could you imagine trying to unbox those mortars out of those, what do they call them, the clover leaves in the snow? Your fingers are frozen. You're trying to get all that crap apart. You're trying to pull those crates apart. Obviously, you'd use your knife as much as you can, but the mortar itself, before you drop that first round and warm that son of a gun up, that's just a big steel cold pipe.
Yeah, and everything you're touching, be it ammo, in many cases ammo boxes,
Browning automatic
or some
rifles,
ammo crates for wood, but I mean, everything you're touching is metal.
Canteen, everything.
Yeah.
Everything with the exception of your clothing. Imagine in the heat of battle, you've been laying in a foxhole. Maybe it's your time to watch the line, right? Maybe you're prone, maybe you're not, but maybe you are. An M1 web belt in the middle of summer during a reenactment can kind of be tricky to get that snap open, to get that M block out. Imagine doing it when you're in 20-degree weather. Perhaps you've been prone in the dirt and ice and the mud, and that webbing is super stiff and hard. Just the simple task of, you know, trying to get your ammo out of your web belt, just everything. Just compounded.
Or, you know, you take a clip and try to put it in your M1 rifle, and, you know, I have one. I'm not as active with it as you and Jeff are, because I don't do living history stuff, but I mean, I've taken it out. I've showed my son how it works. I used to shoot that particular M1, but it's been since the 90s since I did. But I mean, you know, stuff beats your hands up, man. And I mean, then if it's 20 degrees or 15 degrees, it's even more so that way. So, good grief.
Then
I don't know.
Every little thing, just the sensitivity level of your cold fingers, your cold nose, your ears, your cramped toes, just sitting out there, just it's god awful.
Well, so tell me, I mean, from doing living history, so like I know some of the guys, because after I read John Toland's book on the Bulge, which I finished a few days ago, then I read the Osprey book on the first volume of Battle of the Bulge. You know, they've got 2 volumes on the Bulge. And reading Toland's book and then reading the Osprey book, like, it'll show some really good artwork of the guys and what they would be wearing. And the overcoat, the heavy wool overcoat, what was the designation of that?
I don't know particularly, just because I'm down here in Florida. I do know one gentleman who had one that he would happily wear it when it got to 50, because it was cold enough here in Florida to wear it. But I don't know what years they were issued.
Okay.
Sadly, there was a great event up in Pennsylvania. It was called FIG, Fort Indian Town Gap, and it is an active military base today, and it was an active military training base during World War II. And sadly, about 3 years ago, they had their last event due to an accident.
You guys, we talked about that a couple of shows ago, didn't we?
Yeah, and you and I didn't plan on having this discussion tonight, or I would have thought to brought somebody on. But I do know some guys down here who used to drive all the way to Pennsylvania and participate in that. And I've seen photos where there's been times where they're out there in knee-deep snow, and they are out there, and obviously, their gear, they planned ahead, unlike the real Battle of Bulge. So a lot of them had the luxury when they'd go. They have the long johns underneath, and they would have the scarves and as much winter gear as they could to be realistic. And so it was definitely probably a little more comfortable, but they got to experience that. With that being said, the closest I can come to that degree of cold is when I go up to Georgia, and I'm hoping to go this February. Every year up in Lakeland, Georgia, we have a World War II tactical / public event. It's more of a tactical than it is a public event. But last year, the year before that, I got cold. And so last year I got smart, and I stopped at Tractor Supply because I try to be as authentic as I can. And last year was the first time I ever took a sleeping bag. So that was a little unrealistic, but hey, they did have sleeping bags. Just mine was a Walmart sleeping bag for $10. It probably had a lot better thermal. But with that being said, I knew it was going to get cold, so I stopped at Tractor Supply and I bought a bale of square hay. So when I got up there, I set up my pup tent, threw my hay in the bottom, whereas 60% of the other people slept in the Boy Scout loft in barracks. A few of us had tents, but anyhow, I slept out in the tent. That night, it got down to, I think, 28. And it wasn't quite 20, and I wasn't out there for 6 weeks, but I can tell you what it's like to, with the exception of the sleeping bag, I didn't have a pillow. When I go, I use my haversack as a pillow. I take 4 wool blankets. With the exception of that year, I took a sleeping bag. But laying on a hard-ass ground, even with straw underneath me, and I actually have an original tent. I don't have a reproduction tent. I got an original tent. It has the holes in it. It does have the flaps, but, I did... You know how hard it is to find old-school long johns nowadays?
I would imagine pretty tough.
I went on Amazon, and everything's this new Mylar, this new synthetic, and I found a pair of old-style cotton long johns, and I did buy them, and I wore them when I slept. But when I got there Friday, it was raining all day, and so by the time we went to bed Friday night, it had been raining all day, our uniforms were wet. The reason I knew it got down to 28 is I checked my phone the next morning because I went out to my truck to get some stuff. I got a toolbox on my bed. It was covered and it had a layer of ice on it. Like all the rainwater had frozen that night. And so, and I did wear my gloves out there, but yeah, just that 20s and 30 degree, it slowly warmed up through the day, but just that, and plus being a Florida boy who's not acclimated to it, just that minor temperature change was that night, it does, as Robert, like you say, Rob sleep, not only sleeping on a hard ground, but when you're 43, I find my body's good for about 6 hours on the ground.
Really?
And so it's not uncommon to maybe have a few drinks before I go to bed, maybe pass out.
Yeah, to kind of help out.
Pass out for 2 hours and then sleep for 6. But yeah, after about 6 hours, I'm you're just tossing and turning. And plus, after I lost 60 pounds, I got less padding. And so I got more bones that dig into the dirt. But this is an interesting thing you don't read much about in books. Buddy Cowboy was a reenactor for the longest time. He's gotten out of it, and his name is Cowboy because he actually does run a cattle ranch. And he told me what his grandfather taught him is when you set up your pup tent, get your E-tool and cut yourself out about a 3 foot by, however wide your body is, hole, just a divot, just enough so that when you're laying flat, your ass sits in it. And then when you turn over, your hips are kind of into it. And so it kind of makes an ergonomic divot in the bottom of your tent. I've never done it, but but he was explaining if you do that, when you're laying on your side or you're sleeping on your back's kind of more straight because your butt's down in that golf divot, if you will. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. And so those are things that, obviously digging sumps around the edge of your tent for when it rains and all that. But yeah, so the coldest I've ever experienced was like 28. So I could only imagine. And when you're sitting there shivering, even with, long johns on, and I had my wool shirt on and my M43 uniform with the thicker jacket, but you still just sit there and shiver all damn night. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're super tired, and which makes the whole event a little more authentic. But
yeah, but at 43, it would be a lot tougher than I don't know how most of those guys are, how old most of those guys are, but I would imagine.
Well, the average age back then was what? I think, obviously, we've all heard the stories of 17, 18-year-olds, but I think depending on the battalion, I think the average age was between 19 and 20, which that's why it's a young man's game. Your body's more residual. But reenacting is an old man's game because it's expensive, and most 16-year-olds don't have the interest to spend that money, and or their parents aren't willing to spend the amount of money. And so that's why, people always talk about how old reenactors are. Well, that's because most 16 to 18-year-olds don't have the interest in history, nor the
I actually heard, before I joined you and Jeff, I went back and listened to some of the earlier episodes, and I remember more than once you guys talked about that, and you'd have somebody on, and it's like, well, hey, getting into living history is kind of cost. Well, let me it's very expensive.
Let me just give you an example. Your son comes to you and says, Dad, I want to participate in this hobby. I need an air correct uniform. Okay, what are we looking at? Well, I need this helmet. Okay, this is a post-war helmet, beginner helmet. Okay, with a liner, about $120. Okay, the boots, if I get them, I found mine used on eBay for $80. But if you're looking for a brand new pair of boots, anywhere between $180 to $200.
Are we talking soldier or Marine?
Either one.
Okay.
The uniform prices are about the same. Boondockers, when I got mine from What Price Glory. They were, quote unquote, the Pacific carryovers. Mine were $175. So to get in this hobby, you're just dropping close to $200 on footwear. You haven't even gotten a gun, pants, just footwear alone. P41, you're looking at about roughly, depending on where you go, if you want the top line at the front or whatever, you're looking maybe between $98 to $130 just for the jacket. That jacket hanging up on the wall behind you, that's $150. So now you don't even have you just got a pair of shoes and a jacket. You're already $400 into it.
Damn.
And that's why it took me 2 years, or a year and a half to get my first impression. But that's not even counting the price of the rifle. It took me 4 or 5 years before I could afford and track down an M1. So my first couple of years, I carried around my Denix Thompson, which is just a paperweight, and even that was $120. And
nice.
Then I had friends who had extra M1s who would let me use them during. But now, with all that being said, once you get the web gear and all that, and the boots, then it's not. Once you get your web gear, okay, let's say infantry, army, for example. So you get your first impression. Let's say you're going to do your airborne, right? That's what a lot of people get into because of Band of Brothers. So you get your airborne, you get your musette bag. Okay, great. Now you want to switch over to infantry. Maybe you want to start doing an infantry impression. Okay, well, technically, you can put your leggings over your boots. They'll look like early service boots. The only difference, obviously, is they're high tops. But leggings on them, you can't see how high they are. And the only way you can tell from a distance if somebody looks at the heel to see the notch that they put on the airborne boots to keep them from getting snagged on the doorway of their plane. Your M1 belt's the same, so that saves you a couple $100. If you're doing late war, you can use the same musette bag, so you don't have to buy a haversack. So that'll save you $150. You can use the same helmet, so that'll save you $200. So now the only thing you're really buying is a new pair of pants and a new shirt. So then once you get over that first boundary of your first impression, then to change impressions, you're only maybe $200. But if you want to jump to the Marine Corps, technically the M1 belt's a different color. They use different canteen covers, different shoes, different T-shirts underneath, different backpacks, and so you're
a different pattern on the herringbone twill, was it not?
Well, completely different uniform. Different color, different pockets, different buttons, everything. So, you couldn't even really. I guess you could try. I've actually seen it because, you could try to wear your Army HPT pants, but it's a different color. They refer to the Marine Corps as sage green. I actually was at an event and I saw a guy. He grabbed. He was a younger cat. He grabbed the wrong trousers, and I looked at him and I could tell he had on his Army. He was doing an Army impression, but he had his Army light HPT jacket, but he grabbed his Marine Corps pants, and I could tell just because of the shade of green, and you can see the HPT twill pattern. It's like, Oh, and interestingly enough, on the Army's HPT pants, there's no rear pocket.
Okay.
And there's no pant pocket. The only pockets they have are the cargo pants pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So the pockets are even different. Everything is completely different between Marine Corps and Army, even down to the pockets. It's insane.
Well.
Yeah. So, but it's Christmas time. Christmas is coming up. This is going to be our last episode for 2021. We're going to take off Christmas, the Monday following Christmas and the Monday following New Year's. And one of the things that, my generation and definitely your generation, but it's kind of slowly dying off just because of movies like Nightmare Before Christmas, and you're getting more and more newer Christmas carols out, right? But I think for your generation and my generation who grew up in the 70s and 80s, one of the, obviously with the exception of the freedom, let's just say in pop culture, one of the longest lasting influences from World War II has to be Christmas carols, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even to this day, the classics are from the 40s. And so I got a list of the 20 most well-known Christmas carols that we still listen to today that all came out of World War II. And I always think it's interesting this time of year just to kind of reflect on this. And Jeff and I did a little different last year, but we talked about how Christmas carols and all that stuff still have an impact today. Number one on the list, White Christmas, Bing Crosby. I think we're all familiar with that one. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Maybe you don't realize that came out of World War II. Judy Garland. Name sound familiar? Okay. She played Dorothy, did she not? On Wizard of Oz? Pretty sure Judy Garland.
I think it was Judy Garland.
Wizard of Oz. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Judy Garland. People
Don't
screaming
fat
at their
finger it.
Dorothy E. Gale. Hold on. Dorothy Gale. Oh, no. Fictional character created by... Oh, I'm sorry. Dorothy was the character's name. But yes, I'm pretty sure it was Judy Garland. Yes, it was Judy Garland.
Yep.
Who, her daughter was, right? You knew who Judy Garland's daughter was?
No. Tell me.
Wasn't Liza Minnelli her daughter? I want to say yes.
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But anyhow, back to the list. I'm pretty sure Liza Minnelli. I'm not familiar with this title. Maybe I'd recognize the song. This is where a producer would be great because they could look this stuff up. The Christmas Song by Dorothy Day and Les Brown. I'm gonna put this in YouTube real quick, and let's see if we can.
Doris Day or Dorothy Day?
It says Dorothy Day, I believe. Let me look. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Doris Day. Christmas Song, Doris Day. The title doesn't sound familiar, but I'm sure once we hear it. Mm-hmm. Let me. Advertisement. Good thing I got this muted. See if I would. Here we go. Pants. There's no rear pocket. Well, I know what that is. Hold on. That is our...
That works. That goes totally with the song.
I know, but what that actually is, that's our live stream playing, and so that's going to start completely different between Marine... I don't know. Oh, I know. Sorry, that's coming out of YouTube. Okay, so I am familiar with this song now. I didn't realize it was called The Christmas Song. It's kind of a generic title. Hey, Doris, this is your...
I never knew that.
This is your manager here. Christmas season's coming around. I had a couple of guys down in Hollywood write some new music because, we're trying to keep the morale up, trying to, get people going. So we got this great little Christmas song we want you to cut for us. Sure, great. What's it called? The Christmas Song. We just went over this. The Christmas Song.
No, that's iconic, man, but I did not know that it was just called The Christmas Song.
I guess it's kind of genius because you're trying to sell records, you're trying to keep morale up. What a better way, you walk into a record store, yeah, I'm looking for that new Doris Day, the Christmas Song. What's it called? Oh, yeah, hold on, we'll get it for you. So, yeah. So
absolutely.
That's number 3 on the list. We're all familiar with Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. Came out of
World War II?
Yep. That's Connie Boswell with Russell Morgan. Jingle Bells, the Glenn Miller version.
Okay.
I think I was actually playing that. That was the bed that I had underneath that news broadcast I was playing. No, I'm sorry. I was being crowd. No, I thought it's yeah. Now listen to this. I don't want to play too much of this because YouTube will get us. But this is the Glenn Miller Orchestra Jingle Bells, 1941. Now we all know Jingle Bells because we sang it, right? We sang it in elementary school. Did it ever occur to you that we sang the cleaned up elementary school version? Listen to this. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. Okay, that's normal. He gives this whole thing about Mexico. Let me find it. There it is.
Down in Mexico, we have got no snow.
Yeah.
You have got no snow. Down in Mexico.
You just violated about 5 human,
It's like, it's just weird. It's like, Mr. Miller,
human resources is coming to get you.
well, it's just when we think Christmas, we don't think Mexico, and now there's no down snow in Mexico. It's like,
Sure.
what does it have to do with Christmas? But I guess, hey.
But all kidding aside, I had never heard that version.
I mean, I was recording it because that's the bed I was using on the opener, and I'm recording it, and I'm like, Maxie, what? I'm trying to put my headphones on because I was just expecting the same boring jingle bells that we're used to, and I heard that. I'm like, well, that's an interesting one. Winter Wonderland by Johnny Mercer. I'll Be Home for Christmas, Bing Crosby. Obviously, that makes sense. It'd be a World War II song.
That would have been a blockbuster song for World War II.
That was one of the things that we've talked about on this podcast before is like when you start reading about the European theater, Christmas became like the never ending moving goalposts for
Home by Christmas.
We're going to be home by Christmas.
Jump into Berlin and be home by Christmas. Market Garden. If this works, it'll get us home by Christmas.
Yep.
And of course, reading in Toland's book on the Bulge, they're talking about Allies had realized long before that they were not going to be home by Christmas.
Nope. Let's see here. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, Fred Warning.
Mm-hmm.
I Got My Love to Keep Me Warm, Les Brown. That's another one I'm not familiar with by title. So let's go to the old Google machine and see if we can recognize I Have My Love to Keep Me Warm by Mr. Les Brown. Chances are there's going to be an advert. Yes, there is. Let me pause that real quick.
What's the maximum soundbite you can play on something like that?
What do you mean? Per
YouTube regulations.
They'll probably... What will happen is we're not monetized, so it really doesn't matter. If, hypothetically, if you guys want to help us with the experiment, please head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, find the YouTube channel,
absolutely.
Subscribe, get us to 1,000. From what I understand, what happens when you get to 1,000 subscribers and you start making money on YouTube, about 2 years ago I heard this threat. Apparently what happens is if you play a copywritten song on your video, they basically take the money generated by that video and give it to the owner of the copyright of that music. So, but to answer your question, the loose rule of thumb is about 30 seconds.
Okay.
But I've also heard it's weird. I've heard that if it's a song you play on every episode of your podcast, your video, then you kind of get into, or if you play it clean through. But the fact that you and I are talking over it, it's a one-off. You can kind of play the whole thing because, once again, we're talking over it. We're not trying to play it as a radio station. We're not trying to, we're using it as content. The interesting thing is all these songs are recorded in 1941. Anything prior to 1962 is not copyrighted. But that's only the recordings. So, even though these are written in the 40s, example, this I Got My Love to Keep Me Warm was posted in 2018, which means whoever recorded this version of it can basically, it's super weird. But long story short, if the actual original recording was pre-1962, there's no copyright laws.
I had heard that, but I'd forgotten it. That's very interesting.
Well, when I worked in radio and I worked on a talk show, and our channel changed formats a few times, and we went to talk and then the radio. And during the talk show that I produced during our 4-hour show, when we would go to commercials on the live stream on the FM radio, they would play modern day rock songs. But on the live stream version, when this first happened, they have since changed this. But during the live stream, when you listen on the radio, when they went to commercial, they're playing pre-1963 songs, so they didn't have to pay the copyrights on them to save money. But that has since changed. But so that's kind of how I know. So anyhow, here is I Have My Love to Keep Me Warm. Not familiar with this one at all. Okay, this is the Frank Sinatra version of it, but I'm still not familiar with that song.
Me neither.
So I wouldn't put that on a list as classic Christmas carols, but to be fair to this website, I just searched Christmas songs from World War II. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Woody Herman, we're all familiar with that one. I Walk Alone Through Every Christmas, Fred Warning, not familiar with that one at all. Christmas Night in Harlem, Raymond Scott. I'm not familiar with that one either. Christmas Night in Harlem. Raymond Scott. There we go. Gotta get this advertisement out of the way. Hold tight for 15 seconds. Speaking of Christmas shopping, I had to do some last minute Christmas shopping tonight.
Oh, that's always fun.
Not that it helps sadly for the local retailers, I did the majority of our shopping on Amazon, but we're right at that point now that all the shipping's going to come late. And so the last minute guess we had to do locally. Now this is clearly a 1940s song here. But I think this is primarily an instrumental. The Raymond Scott Quartet. Christmas
I bet
Night
he was
in
a
Harlem.
trumpet player.
Sounds like a clarinet player. Well, the clarinet's definitely prominent in the song. Okay, so that's why we're not familiar with that one, because we're of the day and age where our Christmas carols have to have words to them, right? March of the Toys by Tommy Dorsey. Now, I'm a huge fan of Tommy Dorsey, but I can't tell you March of the Toys. Don't know it by name. Will we know it by sound? This would be an interesting one to see. 1939, Tommy Dorsey. This is an old one here. Now, I'm going to say I don't know this one, but looking at the credits, if you are a Broadway buff, a musical buff, I don't know if they still use this, but according to the cover from this Victor Records, Tommy Dorsey, this is from the Babes in Toyland soundtrack, or play.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're into musicals and Broadway and you're familiar with Babes in Toyland, you may be familiar with this song, but it's probably going to be another instrumental. But yeah, so this is Tommy Dorsey's March of the Toys. Now, did your dad play a lot of what we consider classic jazz music when you're growing up?
No, I mean, no. He liked music, but not that genre.
Yeah, I would imagine this being 1939, 1940s. They would probably look at it like their parents' music. They're probably looking for something a little more upbeat and swinging. Obviously, I really didn't listen to this style of music until I got into the hobby. When you're sitting around a museum or a living history event,
and it's got to be period correct.
But I'll tell you, a lot of it's interesting. Pandora used to have a really good station they got rid of called World War II Jazz, and they would play a lot of cool stuff on there. Okay. Winter Weather, Fats Weller. We'll just skip through this real quick. Santa Claus is on his way, Sammy Kaye. A Little Boy and that Santa Claus Forgot. Not familiar with that one. I'm Sending a Letter to Santa Claus. Meet Me Under the Mistletoe. I think we all know that one. Send Me Your Love for Christmas. And Parade of the Wooden Soldiers. I almost wonder if that would be another Babes in Toyland one. It almost sounds like it would be. But yeah, it's like a lot of the the bigger Christmas carols that we're familiar with are definitely straight out of World War II.
Well, like you said, I mean, Christmas was always that, iconic signpost that, okay, let's get them home by Christmas,
I haven't done research, but I would be willing to bet that there really wasn't a Christmas carol genre prior to World War II. I think music recording was still in its infancy. And then obviously during the war years, we needed motivation. We needed to keep spirits high. And so there was a big call for it. But it'd be interesting to, if I had more time or a producer, it'd be interesting to have someone pull up real quick, the spike in quote unquote recorded Christmas music prior to 1942, 43. But I would only imagine there's maybe a small handful.
I know that, a lot of your iconic Christmas carols, like O Little Town of Bethlehem, The First Noel, Good King Wenceslas, Hark the Herald Angels. I mean, a lot of those were, they were written back in the 1800s. But, when were they recorded? That's a good question. I mean,
it's funny. I'm on TikTok a lot, and a lot of people lip sync the scene from the original Shrek. Do you know the Muffin Man? Where the king's got the little cookie guy and the Muffin Man. Yes, I know the Muffin Man. He lives on Drury Lane. And so I did a quick TikTok. I said, there's an entire generation out there now who thinks that the whole thing was written by the writers of Shrek. And I went online. The first recorded documentation of the Muffin Man nursery rhyme was 1820, coming out of London. Basically,
I would have never known that.
About the plague, and it was a nursery rhyme from the views of the downtrodden about how the wealthier people were living. Seems like a bit of a leap, and I just had a thought, and forgive us for going off World War II, but hey, we can do that from time to time. Do you think the reason that your generation and my generation are so durable is because of the nursery rhymes we had when we were kids? Let's look at Ring Around the Rosie. You know where that came from, right? Ring Around the Rosie.
Huh?
Ring Around the Rosie.
Right.
A pocket full of posies. Ashes to ashes. We all fall down. Came out of the Black Plague. A ring around... when you first got the bubonic plague, you would get little red spots on your skin with a ring around it. Ring Around a Rosie. And according to lore... I
did not know that.
According to lore, people would disguise... Well, one, because we all know now the plague was presented by bad personal hygiene, no running toilets, no sewer systems, rats, and all that shit.
Yeah, just poor sanitation.
And so people would try to make themselves smell better because they're all poor. They couldn't afford colognes and perfumes like the rich classes did. So they would put flowers in their pockets. Ring Around the Rosies, pocket full of posies. And then obviously, when people died, they would burn the bodies, get rid of them quick. Ashes to ashes, we all fall down. So your generation, my generation, and people from the 1800s grew up doing nursery rhymes about Ring Around the Rosie, pocket full of posies. So we have that. Of course, nothing makes us rugged than our mom singing to us about sleeping in a baby carriage up on a tree limb that breaks, and then we all plummet to the ground.
Safety violation right there.
So, we're just rugged because from the day we were born, our mothers were singing to us things about death and decay. So, of course, we're going to be rough and rugged.
Yeah, and it was even more so for the World War II generation.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the World War II generation and pop culture, you're familiar with the Golden Girls, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with B. Arthur?
Heard the name.
She played.
I know the name.
She played on Maude, and she also played. Her character on Golden Girls was Dorothy Spornak. She was the manlier one of the bunch. This came up on a military magazine. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite long, and I forget which one it was. But anyhow, B. Arthur's Marine Corps service is evidence of badassery. Despite her public denial, service records show that the Golden Girls actress, Rose, interestingly enough, Rose was actually played by Betty White, but the actress rose to the ranks of staff sergeant while in the Marine Corps Women's Reserve during World War II. Fellow Marines surely were thankful that Bernice Frankel was a friend, traveling down the road and back again. Doesn't seem like you're familiar with Golden Girls, but that's part of the theme song. Thank you for being a friend, traveling down the road and back again. So that's the pun that journalists always have to make when they're writing their articles. So anyhow, traveling down the road and back again. As a truck driver in the Marine Corps' Women Reserve during World War II, Frankel, better known as B. Arthur, portrayed the brazen Dorothy Zornak on Golden Girls, a staunch feminist, Maud, as the show's namesake. That was a show from the 70s. She flat out denied her military service while alive. Because obviously when you're an actress in the 60s and 70s during the anti-Vietnam era, you want to be hip and cool and not an old fuddy-duddy from World War II. Let's see. She flat out denied her military service while alive, but service records maintain that the National Archives confirmed the fact she was a confident Marine Corps officer. Her service becomes like evidence of badassery, says Dr. Kate Brown, author of 2020 Wayne State University Press book, The Golden Girls. Despite her denial, Brown said there is no question that the B. Arthur stint in the Marine Corps made sense. Quote, I think there is loyalty, Brown said. She got that sort of quality, being an introvert with people, and later in life being so politically active with different causes. It makes sense to me. If there were calls for service in World War II, she would be up to answering that call. But yeah, this is a really good write-up. So if you guys are familiar with B. Arthur from Maude and Golden Girls, they actually have photos of her in her uniform doing work around the barracks in there. And they actually pulled up her service records, and you can see a letter from B. Arthur's service recording indicating her interest in joining the Marine Corps' Women Reserve. So basically, she looks like she hand wrote a letter of why she should be approved to join the Women's Reserve back in the day. So it's always interesting.
Very cool.
There is a great documentary called Return to Tarawa. And I'm sure you've probably seen it, right? It came out in the, I think, late 90s.
It sounds really familiar.
That's basically the one where I forget the vet's name, but he was a coxswain on a landing craft, and he went back in the early 2000s.
Talking about Eddie Albert?
Hold on, let me Google it. Actually,
Green Acres?
Well, that's what I was getting to, but that's not who was in it. The Return to Tarawa documentary. Because anyhow, the Return to Tarawa, World War II veteran. Let's see. Return to Tarawa, Leon Cooper story, 2009 documentary.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually
I need to check that out.
It's on YouTube. You can see the whole thing, and that's actually where I first became aware of the History Flight service down there. Those are the ones who were responsible for recovering Marine Corps body parts to this day. They're the ones that helped find Bonnyman Evans, as we spoke to his grandson in Bones of My Grandfather.
Right.
But anyhow, in this documentary, Leon Cooper goes back down to Tarawa and is perplexed, dismayed, and downright disgusted on the horrible conditions in which those beaches were in when it came to litter and pollution.
Right. I've heard Tarawa was pretty bad.
And so during this documentary, he's trying to, I want to say, for some reason I remember him writing to Al Gore, but this was obviously after Clinton's stint. But anyhow, he was writing Al Gore, probably because that was right around the time Al Gore was really heavy into the environmental stuff. He was writing Al Gore, trying to get Al Gore to help back him and getting the United States government to fund recycling plants and trash collection on Tarawa. Because basically the local government just can't afford it. They don't have the education. You go to Red Beach 1, it's just diapers and bottles and trash.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just god-awful. And so in this documentary, he's on a mission, and he brings up what you're just talking about, Eddie Albert. He's saying, there's this landing craft going back and forth all day, and they're just pulling the Marines out and taking them back, wounding Marines, and all day long, it turns out it was Eddie Albert from Green Acres. I think he got a Bronze Star for doing that. Mm-hmm. And but they were interviewing construction, American contractors down there who own construction companies. And they say every time they break ground on a new project, they recover artifacts and bones
Sure. Yeah.
And sadly, on this one recording, he said he had the remains of an M1 helmet liner, 2 souls of some boondockers, and some bones of a Marine that had been sitting under his drafting table for 8 months because we were so slow in the recovery process, even once they've been reported.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a good documentary. It's actually on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. But yeah, you hear all the time all these actors that we grew up watching in the 70s and 80s and in the 60s who obviously it makes sense because their entire generation served.
That's right.
But
well, I mean, if we're talking Christmas stuff here,
sure,
man, I mean, a classic, iconic Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, with our favorite B-24 pilot, Jimmy Stewart. I think he commanded a B-24 squadron, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now. Yep. Stewart flew 20 dangerous combat missions in a B-24 combat pilot wing commander of squadron commander, earning the Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 oak leaf clusters, the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, and the French Croix de Guerre with Palm. Pardon my French for really messing up that French, but yeah, he let's see here. Stewart had flown over 400 flight hours as a civilian pilot when he enlisted in the Army Corps in 1941 and became an instructor of both the B-17 and the B-24. In November 1943, Stewart was sent to England as Operation Officer of the 703 Squadron, 445th Bombardment Group of the 8th Air Force, transferring to the 453 Bombardment Group in March of 1944. Stewart flew 20 dangerous combat missions, as we just read. After the war, Stewart remained in the United States Air Force Reserve and was promoted to Brigadier General by 1959. So, I mean, not only did he serve, but he's kind of a lifer on top of his acting career.
Yeah. I mean, he served with great distinction from everything I heard.
You and I were doing a not suitable for podcast bad impressions of Band of Brothers before the show went on the air. And we were doing the scene about where Sobel cut the fence and they wanted to know, it said Major Horton. Now, we all learned from Band of Brothers that Major Horton did not survive the war, but do you know how he actually died?
Well, I mean, I know the scene, Allie Horton, they got the hell beat out of him. Yeah, but no, I don't.
Now, not to belate this book too much, but it is so full of great history. Once again, going back to what seems to be the book of the last couple months for me, September Hope. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but let's see here. Go to the previous page. Near the railroad station south of town, where H Company was fighting hard to ward off the attack, Major Horton arrived. The major was hoping to spot the German route of advance and arrange for artillery to saturate it. The first Lieutenant Robert Stroud, the company commander in tow, he began working his way forward towards the railroad tracks. Private First Class Joe Harris saw the 2 officers and warned them that the enemy fire was heavy in that direction, but they ignored him. They stopped between a pair of houses in what would amount to no man's land and tried to spot the Germans. Within seconds, mortar shells exploded all around them. Quote, "We immediately hit the ground," Stroud said. "After they stopped firing, I got up, but Major Horton did not. I turned him over and saw that he was white and bubbling at the mouth. Stroud pulled the wounded major back to the direction of the company. Other soldiers left the cover to help them. They managed to evacuate Horton, but he died soon thereafter. A pair of medics placed his body on the Jeep, and they began driving him to the rear while dodging artillery shells along the way. They braked and swerved so much that one of the soldiers had to hang on to Horton's body to keep him from falling into the mud." So, like a lot of, we hear a lot of times there's commanders who hang out in the rear with the gear and don't want to get out of the perpetual safety of being in the rear. And then there's people like Horton who want to get eyes on the ground, get a sense of what actually is going on, to get a better sense of how to lead his men. And he went out trying to figure out which way the Germans were coming, and he got taken out in essentially an artillery strike.
Well, and in essence, that is what if you listen to Sink's lines, that kind of is what they say.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean, because Horton was not an actual character. I mean, they talked about him because he was a real figure, but in the miniseries, we never actually see Major Horton.
No, we just hear his name enough that we know who he was and that he existed. And that was one of the, and I think that's one of the things you discussed when it comes to the difference between the Band of Brothers and the Pacific is the Band of Brothers cover a lot more, even if it's just verbally through stories. You get more of a sense of the command structure,
right,
of what's going on, whereas the Pacific, they covered the logistics, a little bit of the command structure, who Chesty Puller was and all that, but the primary focus was on those 5 guys and their buddies and the living conditions in the battle in which they fought, not so much, the Smiths and all that stuff. And so, but
beneath the rim of the helmet, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a little World War II news. I thought I've actually had this one, but I didn't want to do it last week and interrupt the interview. Athens, Greece. I may have done this, but I think I did not. And if I did, we'll just do it again, and you can stop me. But Athens, Greece. Russians will return to Greece the pre-war archive to Jewish communities that were stolen by Nazi forces in the Mediterranean countries, Jewish Council said on Thursday. Quote, "Our history will return home," the Central Board of Jewish Communities in Greece said in a statement. KAIS is the abbreviation, said the Nazi forces in July 1942 had plundered archives, books, and religious artifacts from 30 synagogues, libraries, and commercial institutions, in which, at the time, were the home of some of the largest Jewish populations in Europe. They were transferred to Moscow after the Red Army took to Berlin in 1945. Quote, "The restitution would mean justice and would transmit knowledge about the part of a Greek people who contributed to the progress of the country and no longer exist. That of 60,000 Greek Jews who were deported and exterminated in the Nazi death camps." We hear a lot about the Jews that were rounded up in, the primary European areas, but, I guess unless you do a lot of reading up on Italy and Stalin, in that whole area, in Greece and all in the Mediterranean, we really don't hear too much about the roundups in the Mediterranean.
No, not typically.
I mean, not to the numbers that you could ask somebody and they say, "Oh yeah, 60,000 Greek Jews were rounded up." I mean, I think it's probably the first time I've ever heard that number.
Well, if you talk about PTO, ETO, the Mediterranean, I probably read the least about that theater of World War II. And there's some compelling stories there. I mean, there's some great stuff there.
Back to the story. The acknowledgement was arranged on Wednesday during a visit to Moscow by the Greek Prime Minister. I'm not even going to bother slaughtering his name. Forgive me for that. No date on the return was given. The archives had until now been stored among Russian military files, and Greece had sought out the return for decades, the Prime Minister's office said. At the return of the last century, some 90,000 Jews lived in this Greek community, a key trading port of the Ottoman Empire, making up some 60% of the population. By the end of World War II, faced with poverty, tension with the Greeks, who took control over the city in 1912, and the devastating fire that left 55,000 homeless in 1917, the community dwindled to some 55,000. Obviously, if we're talking 1917, that's World War I numbers, so I don't know why they said it, but on the eve of World War II. But anyhow, the Nazis entered the city in April 1941, back to World War II, but it was not until 2 years later that they began implementing their final solution to the Greek Jewry, they say here. On March 15, 1943, the Nazis began deporting the Jews from the Thalescan, that Greek community that I'm not smart enough to pronounce properly. Some 4,000 people were loaded onto cattle cars and were shipped off to Auschwitz, a death camp in the Nazi-occupied Poland, the longest journey of all the train transports to the Holocaust. 18 more convoys followed. By August, 49,000 out of the city's pre-war population of 55,000 Jews had been deported. Fewer than 2,000. That is staggering and disgusting that they, in this one community, they almost achieved their goal of eliminating them.
Right.
55,000. But luckily, this Greek community will get that paperwork back, and I'm sure, I can only imagine once they get that documentation back, and they can come up with some names, there will be some beautiful monuments and plaques made up.
I'm
As
sure.
we tend to do with names of the victims and those lost during historical battles. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just so gross. And you had a book you said you wanted to review, correct? Or talk about?
Well, yeah, I just started by my friend Adam Makos, just started Spearhead. But Jeff said I think he's like almost finished with it, so he wanted to hold off so we could all talk about it.
Yeah, that'd only be fair because he did miss out on the John Basilone talk, and I know that really irked him. Poor Jeff. So maybe we shouldn't come out and steal conversations and topics out from underneath him.
But it's okay to say that I finished the Tolan book on Battle of the Bulge, which, that's under that class of books, an oldie but a goodie. Because I think it was written in 1959. So, but I finished that and, read the Osprey book on the volume 1 of the Bulge, and then started Spearhead last night. And I think when I finish it, I want to jump into Danny Parker's book on the Battle of the Bulge, because he wrote another book, kind of a companion book called To Win the Winter Sky.
Okay.
And that's strictly aviation stuff, the Luftwaffe, Operation Bodenplot, kind of the last gasp effort against the Allies, early 45.
Yeah, I gotta start scheduling dedicated reading time, because people's like, wow, he's been reading September Hope forever. Yes, I have, but it's not because
I didn't say that. I mean,
no, I'm saying I hear what the listener's thinking, and and part of the reason is, one, I'm not saying you guys aren't. I'm super mad busy, and not between 3 podcasts, YouTube, and all that. I only read for about 20 minutes a night, and so
Well, yeah.
So if I were to force myself to read for 2 or 3, at least an hour or 2, but 20 to 30 minutes max. Every once in a while, I'll sit there and read a little longer. But that's part of the reason why I've been, reading this one for so long. But
what's next on your list after you finish September? Are you pretty close to finishing that?
Yeah, no, I got maybe 2 chapters left.
What's next on your list?
I got that Peleliu book that I bought.
Tragic Triumph.
Yep, and
that's a good one.
I want to read that, but for the sake of the show, I'm looking at some books that I got for presents. I have this book called The Fatal Dive about submarines. We don't ever give submarine talk on here because no one's really submarine experts. So I'm kind of wondering maybe to get out of my comfort zone, because obviously I know a lot about the PTO and I know a substantial amount about the ETO, but maybe just for sake of content, maybe I'm thinking I got Fatal Dive. I have Hitler's Last Days, which I think I already read, but I know I have one about one of the I think the Desert Fox. I think I got some books about some of them. Oh, Panzer! I got a book here called Panzer Generals. Maybe I should read. So I'm thinking about maybe breaking into 1 or 2 of those.
I'm usually on ETOs. We've talked about this. I'm usually on ETO stuff through the cold weather or Eastern Front. And then when it starts warming back up, man, I'm back to Guadalcanal and Okinawa and Peleliu and Cape Gloucester and the Pacific, But, yeah, I mean, that's...
If you ever find yourself overrun with melancholy and you want to be depressed and you want to live like you maybe like a depressed 18 to 20-year-old, a really good book into the psyche of Hitler and what made him such a horrible piece of shit that he was, is called Hitler, The Pathology of Evil. My dad gave me that book a few years back, and it's pretty... Now, obviously, a lot of this is a hypothesis based on the author, but the evidence the evidence that he presents going all the way back to Hitler's childhood, it seems to me, reading this book and the evidence this guy presents, and this is not a hypothesis of his, this is a hypothesis of mine that I gathered reading the evidence. based on the laws that Hitler put into place when he first got into power, if those laws had existed before he was born, he would have never have been born. So it seems like he had such low self-esteem and such hatred for himself and his family that he was almost trying to create policies that would have prevented him from ever being born. And one of those is the fact that when he got into power, one of the first rules he made was that no rich people back then, obviously they had people, maids, they had housekeepers,
and servants.
Servants. One of the first ones he made was no Jewish girl of childbearing years could work for an Anglo. Mm-hmm. And when he was a kid, there was rumors around his family that his father had an affair with his mother with their Jewish house servant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously we all, but anyhow, it's very interesting insight. Kind of talking, now we know that not only did he round up the Jews, but he rounded up gypsies and homosexuals. There's a whole chapter about his best friend post-World War I that he often wrote letters to, fantasizing about how him and this other gentleman would grow old together prior to his best friend getting married to a woman. And there's just a lot of interesting stuff in there that really
makes you wonder.
And they show where he gets his people don't realize the whole Heil Hitler thing, the whole arm movement. He stole that from Mussolini. Il Duce. Mm-hmm. He stole that from Mussolini. The whole pencil mustache, he got that. There's a picture of a painting in there of, it's supposed to be like representative of Apocalypse, the end of the Bible, Revelations of a demon on a horse, and in the painting the guy had the little pencil mustache. So Hitler basically stole his look from this painting that's way beyond his years. And there's actually photos from his friend took before he got the power in his photo studio of Hitler practicing his speeches and doing the whole hand gestures and all that stuff. And they really go in this book, Hitler, The Pathology of Evil. It's, like I said, it's kind of dark and it's depressing as shit. But if you really want to, get an insight on what made him so horrible and how he got to doing the things he did, his father was a very strict. His dad was like a politician of the towns they lived in.
It's like a local Gauleiter or something like that.
Yeah, he wasn't quite
local official, kind of low level.
Yeah, he was like a low level official, but he had enough power to, be looked up to in the communities. But he was like a strict disciplinarian to Hitler. But his mom was on the other. His mom was one of those all my kid could do no wrong type thing. So when his dad would discipline him and do all this horrible crap to him as a kid, he would go to his mom and she would baby him the whole other direction. It's just his whole fundamental childhood. The whole thing is just, it gives you a real insight into, how things got as bad as they were. But yeah, sure. It's one that you may want to put somewhere on your list someday if you want to get on that road.
Yeah, I don't.
Hitler's Last Days was a book someone gave me I haven't read yet. I with the exception of The Pathology of Evil, I really don't get too much into his stuff. I don't know.
I've never explored it on any, other than a really cursory level of just reading the things I normally read, which focus more on the military involvement and those aspects. And that he would keep his inner confidants, his inner circle, he would keep them up all hours of the night, bloviating about and just going on in these endless monologues.
That's all the PCP
about his worldviews and
That's because all the amphetamines he was on.
Oh yeah, but you can just picture his generals are just like trying to stay awake, and
I haven't heard this anywhere but within this book, but this author claims that Hitler was a strict, devout vegetarian to the point where if people ate meat in front of him, he would call them meat eaters. and frowned
never
upon
heard
them.
that.
And according to this book, once again, I'm just going off this book, he was talking about like when Hitler would review the human experiment footage,
Right.
only time he would look away is when they were performing experiments on animals. Like he was a huge dog lover. So to him,
Oh yeah.
you can do the world's most horrible stuff to human beings because he hated humans so bad, but you do that to a dog, he would get like incensed about it. So yeah, he's just weird. His worldview was just so rocked. It's all you can say.
Without a doubt.
And that's why the book's called The Pathology of Evil, because, I mean, obviously as history can show, he's definitely one of the most evil, or at least top 5 out of all the world's evil people. Some may say Genghis Khan and all that, but I guess Hitler probably number 1. But more certified historians were better to make that argument than me. But yeah, it's just one of those books that's on my shelf. But yeah, so I want to read that Peleliu book, but I kind of think I might jump into that final dive about the submarines.
Is that from the American or German perspective?
I'm just looking at the binder. Hold 2 seconds. I'll grab it. I just got to run across the studio. I guess it's the Final Dive, solving the World War II mystery of the USS Grunion. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. So when I was at Auburn, I minored in German, and my German teacher, I remember her telling us that her father-in-law had been a U-boat crewman.
Okay.
And I remember being really fascinated by that because, I had seen Das Boat. And of course, I didn't have access to the wealth of books and things that we have access to now. But I looked it up, and I mean, I think I told her, because she was a very nice lady, and we talked a lot. I said, if your father-in-law was a U-boat crewman, then he was one of 7,000 out of about 32,000 who actually survived to make it home.
Sorry, I just opened this book, and you and I and Jeff were talking off the air last week about a lot of times when you book authors, their publishing company will send you a advanced copy of the book. And I think I remember now, the reason I didn't remember too much about this book is I think I got this when I worked in radio, because I opened it up and here is a press release about this particular book and contact information. And so, yeah, it's, I've had this book for so long. I got it when I worked in radio that actually has the press release, and I should read this and then go to the press release and see if I can book the author.
Well, you ought to.
I have the booking information right there. Things have been sitting on my shelf for probably 5 years. They're like, oh yeah, we sent that out years ago, but thanks for contacting us. Hey, we're booked up over here, but yeah. One more thing before we go. I know. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Pulled this up from the National World War II Museum.org. Christmas on the home front during World War II. Here's just little factoids, if you will. We'll just burn through real quick. During World War II, Christmas trees were in short supply. Makes sense, because the lack of manpower to cut the trees down and the shortage of railroad space and to ship the trees to market. So Americans rushed to buy American-made viscous artificial trees. So those were like the first artificial trees back then. Looked horrible back in the day. I mean, I remember growing up. Just think 5 foot tall Charlie Brown Christmas trees. You could see.
I was just about to say Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Artificial trees have come a long way in the last 80 years. Now you really have to look like at the real expensive ones. Like I saw one at a store that actually had 2 or 3 different textures, like of the quality of needles. And you really had to dig inside to see if it was artificial. In 1941, a 5-foot Christmas tree could be purchased for 75 cents. Now it costs you about $95.
Yeah, probably more than that.
Well, Carrie and I, we were pro real Christmas trees for the longest time, and I think 2018 is when we got our first artificial tree, because the price was slowly going up and up and up. And then we bought a house with cathedral ceilings, and I'm 6'5", so being 6'5", you don't want a 6-foot Christmas tree. And so we have like, I think an 8-footer now, but we ended up buying one finally years ago. And I miss the smell, but I don't miss the needle droppings and dragging that son of a bitch out my front door at the end of the year.
Man, there's pros and cons. Andrea and I have gone, when we first got married, we had the real trees. Then we went pre-lit, artificial for several years. And I mean, that was like stowing a dead body. You know, the damn box is like, you're shoving it in there. Well, so we did that for several years. And, you know, I'm like, man, if we would get rid of this damn thing, I would have all kinds of room in the shed.
Yep.
So we got rid of that, went back to real trees, and now we're back on real trees. So that's
the other downside here in Florida, insects. We don't have winter. We don't have snow. We don't have dropping temperature that kills off the ants. And so having that water source in the middle of your tile floor is just an attraction for lizards, bugs, and everything else. This is something that, no, not yet. Next one. The shortage of materials like aluminum and tin used to produce ornaments led to many people making their own ornaments at home. Magazines contain patterns for ornaments made out of non-proprietary war materials like paper, string, and natural objects such as pine cones and or nuts. And then, obviously, we all know the popcorn tradition.
Yeah.
This one gave me a flashback, and my mom had these until the 80s. Electrical bulb lights were created during the 1940s. No, that's not the one. Electric bulb lights were created during the 40s. No, they're talking about the bubbler lights. Remember the bubblers?
You're talking about the C9 lights.
They had the little base, and you had the little, almost like thermometer, and it made the bubbles come up in the colors.
No. Well, actually, I have a Christmas night light that my wife got me. That's one of those.
Yeah, the bubblers were created too. To give the Christmas trees a snow-covered effect, people would mix a box of Lux soap powder with 2 cups of water and brush the concentration on the branches of their trees. This makes sense too. Fewer men at home resulted in fewer men available to dress up and play Santa Claus. Women served as substitute Santas at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York and other department stores around the United States. I'll Be Home for Christmas and White Christmas were both written during the 1940s, as we discussed earlier, and quickly gained popularity during the war-weary but optimistic population. Travel during the holidays was limited to a must for families due to the rationing of tires and gasoline. Americans saved up their food rations and stamps to provide extra food for fine holiday meals. And lastly, many Americans threw their German-blown glass ornaments and exotic Japanese ornaments in the trash as soon as the war began. Shortly after the war, Corning Glass Company in New York began mass production of Christmas tree bulbs using machines designed to produce light bulbs. Corning could make more ornaments in a single minute than the German cottage glass blower could make in a whole day. So, kind of like we did after 9/11, we renamed our French fries to Freedom Fries. It was all good from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we tossed out all our German and Japanese made ornaments and fancy stuff, and we went pro all-American made, which, you know, we really haven't talked about too much on this, and we're going to wrap it up. But on my other podcast, I was talking to my brother. It's like, you know, with the supply shortage and everything sitting off of the coast of California and all the shortages during the pandemic, kind of makes you think that maybe we need to start living like our grandparents who lived through the Great Depression. Remember, they your dad wouldn't throw anything away. Anything that came with a sealable lid or a box ended up in the garage holding something. But more importantly, I think we need to, even if it costs you a little bit more out the counter, I think we need to start focusing on buying stuff that lasts and trying to repair things that break instead of throwing them away.
The sad thing is, I mean, you know, it's just, I love the idea of a quality item that it will last and last, and if it breaks, you get it fixed. But hell, it's just cheaper to buy a new one.
Yeah, but
and that's sad.
It's interesting though, because I'm an IT guy, and I cannot tell you the videos I produce my YouTube videos on. I mean, laptop. That was a laptop that was deemed not good enough by a customer. They bought a brand new laptop. I had me copy the date on it. Didn't want the old one. Okay, I'll take care of it for you. I put a new hard drive in it, load of Windows, and it's good enough to produce YouTube videos. The computer over here, computer station number 1 in this podcast studio is knowing, computer's not hip enough. It's not got the latest, greatest. I want a new one. They bought a new computer, transferred their data, gave them their hard drive, told me to recycle this one, put a new hard drive in it. Works well enough to do this podcast. So, computers are one of the things people list as being obsolete. Well, sure, if you're playing, expensive video games, you need the latest, greatest, or you're producing Hollywood grade videos, sure. But if you're checking emails, getting on Facebook, and processing some photos for some family stuff, your computer's going to actually last a hell of a lot longer than people give them credit for.
Well, that's good to know.
Yep. But anyhow, we're going to, before we go, Henry, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything going on?
Yeah, actually, so a week from tomorrow, Tuesday the 28th, I'm going to have a conversation with Angus Wallace of the World War II podcast.
Nice.
I have been listening to his shows for a while. He's been around for several years. But yeah, he reached out to me. We're going to have a conversation Tuesday the 28th. That does not mean that's when the show will air. I don't know when that'll be, but we'll do it on the 28th. And then I corresponded today with the guy that I mentioned. I think it probably kind of got lost in the shuffle because we were texting back and forth a lot, but Jonathan Bernstein, he is the arms and armor curator for the Museum of the Marine Corps.
Nice.
He was on Paul Woodadge's World War II TV, and he was talking about 9th Air Force, P-47s, Army Air Corps stuff. Jeff would love it. And he was talking about all that during the Battle of the Bulge, and I was loving it too because the P-47 is probably my second all-time favorite airplane. But I contacted Paul and said, hey, man, I wouldn't mind talking to him. And Paul just shot me back. Yeah, he'd be a great guest for your podcast. He'd love to talk to you, So I emailed him. Paul gave me his email address. I emailed him earlier today, expecting maybe or maybe not get a response. He sent me back a super nice, effusive, email, and had some great things to say about my dad's book. Not that I was asking for that, but I was like, hey, man, I'm super into the stuff you were talking about, 9th Air Force, P-47s, all that good stuff. And he is the arms and armor curator at the Museum of the Marine Corps. Nice. But I mentioned our show. He said he'd like to come on. So, you, me, and Jeff will get together and figure out when that'll happen.
Absolutely.
Probably, I guess, February maybe, because it sounds like we're kind of booked for January. I know Paul Woodadge, we're talking about having him. What date did you put him on the calendar? Was it January 17th?
I would have to look. We'll discuss that off air, but yeah, I'd have to look. But yeah, I was just thinking whether it's the National Museum for the Marine Corps or maybe even the National World War II Museum, which would be closer to you. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be kind of cool if me, you, and Jeff and family or whatever, we can kind of pin down a date where maybe the three of us can actually meet in real life at one of those museums. That'd be kind of cool.
That would be great, Don. I mean, I would love that. I mean, we're actually, the 20th anniversary, 20th symposium of Band of Brothers is January 8th and 9th, or January 8th. That, to what you said, yes, that's a great idea. And we really need to shoot for that. But to do it at a museum would be awesome. Because
not only is it close to you, but the Marine Corps would be cool, but that's in Virginia, and that would be further travel for Jeff. Be further travel for you, but the National Museum of World War II is closer to you. It's closer to me. That one may be a decent one.
And here's an idea. It kind of got me.
We can do a live podcast from there.
I was going to say, I mean, I know people there. Contact them and go, hey, man, I do a podcast. They've really been nice to me and my family through the years. Yeah.
Let's discuss that off the air, because something like that would be something we'd want to schedule months in advance, obviously for logistics, but for promotion. That's not something you want to say, oh, by the way, next week we'll be here, tune in. That's something we'd want to promote months out. So, yeah, we need to try to figure out the logistics on that. Let's work on that in the background. But, yeah, we want to thank you guys for joining us for another episode. We will be back. Oh, let's see. We're off this Monday, and basically we're off the Monday following Christmas. We're off the Monday following New Year's Eve, so we will be back on, looks like, the 10th, and that is when Matt DePalma will be joining us. So thank you guys, as always, for hanging out with us